In 2016, we built an unbeatable operation that changed history. Now, we unveil our next breakthrough. The exclusive Trump 2020 app. This isn't just an app. This is your source for real news, not fake news. Straight from the campaign and the president himself. This is your direct line to give input on key campaign issues. Your portal to register voters. Host MAGA meetups. Your scheduler. Your application on becoming a Trump team leader. Join millions and get a front row seat to our virtual events. Watch Team Trump every night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Earn points, get rewarded. Get the presidential photo. Oh, and did we mention this is your personal shopper too? So just to repeat, this isn't just an app. This is your tool to keep America great. Join the army for Trump and download the app today.
Trump campaign is now reaching voters online.
You are seeing the President of the United States. Look at the lines. You join our movement. A lot of President Trump supporters here. Greatest movement in the history of our country.
I think the one thing we can say they all have in common is they are fighters. Both figuratively and literally.
We are leaders in our communities, going to ensure that President Trump gets reelected soundly in November.
Because we have such strong leadership coming from the White House, we are making it through.
God has called President Trump for this purpose in this time. So let's keep voting for him, and we will keep winning.
I honestly don't know why Joe Biden is running. He can't remember anything.
President Trump has been a champion for families and in particular for mothers.
And he ran on, I'm going to build the wall.
We are one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God. We will make America great again.
Welcome to Team Trump Online.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Team Trump Online. Tonight we have a very special show. We're going to be talking about the critical issue of healthcare and how it's impacting Americans, especially during this time of the coronavirus pandemic. Joining me tonight are three very special women, starting with our chairwoman of the Republican National Committee, Ronna McDaniel. Ronna, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Katie Talento, former White House Domestic Policy Council official, as well as president of KFT Consulting. Katie, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
And Dr. Merlynn Carson, CEO of Meridian. Thank you for joining us. And you're also part of our Women Advisory Board for Team Trump.
Yes, thanks for having me.
So this is, I think, an issue that we all are concerned about. You know, as moms, as having older parents, as wives, obviously healthcare is something that really is such an important part of what we need to decide every day for our families. And I think going through this pandemic together, where all of our lives are being impacted, it really brings to light the need of ensuring that we keep the cost of healthcare low, that we have price transparency, that we know what we're dealing with when we're having to talk to our doctors. And in fact, we've seen actually a change on how we even talk to our doctors, now doing a lot of the telehealth. Dr. Carson, let me ask you, have you seen coming through experiencing this coronavirus pandemic in your community, how has healthcare changed when it comes to how doctors are now communicating with their patients?
We have given more access to it thanks to the expansion of the telehealth programs. Even within Medicare, we have more access and people can talk to their providers better. So yes, telehealth has definitely expanded and really given us the healthcare access that's needed.
So, Katie, I think, one of the things that we're looking at, obviously, is we've seen President Trump work hard, and you were at the White House during this time when it was trying to figure out how do we lower the cost of health care. This, obviously, you contrast that with Joe Biden, where Joe Biden has made it very clear that he's going to move towards a Medicare for all basically system, which is, as we know, a bureaucratic, government-controlled healthcare system. How would that impact everyday Americans?
Right. Well, one of the scariest parts of Joe Biden's plan is how it hurts seniors. So Biden's plan would make seniors have to compete with younger Americans for doctor's appointments and life-saving surgeries. Biden's plan would bankrupt the Medicare Hospital Trust Fund for seniors, which is already set to run dry in 6 years if Congress doesn't act. And he wants to add more people and $2 trillion in debt. What I'm really worried, Marcy, about our rural hospitals. They're really fragile right now. And Biden's plan would slash rates that are paid to those hospitals who are already struggling to survive. So that means less care available in the communities where our seniors live, and more likelihood that they'll have to go into nursing homes instead, further away from their families who love them.
Ronna, I think you're go ahead, Dr. Carson.
So one other thing to note also is the wait times. I mean, we're seeing this in Canada healthcare, right? They have this plan. It's to see a specialist is 4.5 months before you can see a specialist. So yes, Katie's right. We're gonna, it's a long time wait, and some people can't wait for treatment like that. And another thing is also there's a shortage in this country in terms of physicians. And if we're lowering the cost, 40% is, physicians are going to make in this plan 40% less than what they're making with private sector. How are we going to keep having physicians? How are we going to justify to them that they should make less but work more?
So Ronna, the president has said it. I remember when I was at the White House, he talked about the Republican Party becoming the party of healthcare. And of course, the Democrats have always said that they own this issue of healthcare. What's your response to that?
Well, the Democrats want a one-size-fits-all healthcare plan, and that's just not what our country is about. The president realizes how important the states are in this, recognizing the importance of that doctor-patient relationship. I'm a mom. I don't want bureaucrats in Washington telling me what doctors I can go to, taking away my pediatrician that I've had for years for my kids. And that's exactly what Joe Biden and Democrats are proposing. They want Washington to control every aspect of our lives. And the president recognizes how important that local relationship is, and also recognizing the uniqueness of the states. Massachusetts is different than Mississippi, is different than California, and one size fits all healthcare doesn't work. So taking it back to the states and letting us maintain that doctor-patient relationship is critical, and that's what President Trump is fighting for.
Yeah, I remember clearly, and Katie, I think you remember this as well, when Obama says you can keep your doctor, and we figured out that under Obamacare you could not keep your doctor. So what does this mean, moving to a Medicare for all option in America?
Right. So, Joe Biden's government first plan means you're going to pay more, you're going to wait longer, as Dr. Carson said, and you're going to wait longer for worse care. But American patients deserve a system that helps them get well, not wait in line. And, Joe Biden has promised he's going to raise your taxes. He promised. He said, this is how I'm going to pay for my plan. I'm going to raise taxes. But we're already paying too much. You should get amazing, affordable health care without having to send more to the IRS. And let me tell you, Mercy, we all remember this. When Joe Biden was in charge of healthcare, Obamacare premiums doubled. Deductibles and employer plans tripled. President Trump has lowered premiums for Obamacare plans, and he's even turned drug prices in a better direction.
So what does this represent, Dr. Carson? I think one of the biggest fears we're seeing is you're going to have about 180 million people lose their private health insurance. That is a significant number. You've got patients, you're interacting with these patients. Is that a major concern, knowing that Joe Biden would basically move in a direction where individuals would lose their private health insurance?
Yeah, so I think we're taking the healthcare aspect of control for the patients out of it, and what we're doing is, we're giving the big government access to it under this plan, and we're the whole concept of personalized healthcare and you having control over it, we're taking that perspective out of it. We're also decreasing care. The traditional Medicare does not cover a lot of things that a private health insurance does cover. So that we're missing that aspect of it.
And I think also, Dr. Carson, the concern is then you find those doctors that want to leave their practices because they're saying, why do I have to stay in if we know that it's not going to work out for these doctors? So, I mean, are you sensing that in the medical community where if we move to a Medicare for all option, the Biden option, that the doctors would be discouraged to continue their practices?
Yes, they'll be discouraged to continue their practices, but we're also going to have a hard time getting folks to be a doctor, to go into these fields, because again, they're going to getting paid less, they're getting less, they're going to be able to focus less on their patients, and then we're asking them to work more.
Ronna, one of the things during the debates that caught my eye was the fact that when they asked the question to all the candidates, when they had the however many candidates, 12, 13 candidates up there, Democrat candidates saying, who would provide free health care to illegals? And they all raised their hands, Joe Biden included. I mean, what is Biden thinking?
Yeah, Joe Biden raised his hand to that question. We know that would create more of a magnet for people to come to this country illegally. We already know that our system is broken. And so Joe Biden's like, hey, let's just break it further. And let's burden more people with the cost of health care through your taxes. I mean, let's not forget, this burden is shifting to the taxpayer. You're going to pay more for less quality health care. And when you say you're going to give it to people who are coming here illegally, well, what about people who are paying taxes? And what about people who are working hard, who are legal in this country? I just think it's such a shame to see Joe Biden go further and further left. But people should be very, very wary of what Democrats are pushing. They want single payer. They want a government takeover of our health care. And Dr. Carson's right. We will lose all of our private health care plans. And from my state of Michigan, there are a lot of union members who count on their negotiated private health care plans, and they do not want to see a government takeover of their health care.
Well, we're going to continue this discussion about health care and its impact on our country. And in the next segment, we're going to be talking about Joe Biden and how he is very connected to China and what that means in terms of China's and their role during this coronavirus pandemic. So stay with us.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
My administration will take all necessary steps to safeguard our citizens from this threat.
Hysterical xenophobia. Be giving Americans a false sense.
Is it accurate that if these steps had not been put in place, it could have been 2 million people dead here in the United States?
Yes. No matter how hard they try to stop us, they can't. We built the greatest economy the world has ever seen, and we're going to do it again. Together, we're beating back the invisible enemy.
What the federal government did was a phenomenal accomplishment.
Through it all, the world has witnessed the unyielding resolve of our incredible American people.
Promise made, promise kept.
And I'm fighting for you, and I love doing it with everything that I have. And you know that.
With the grace of God, we will win this war, and we will win this war quickly.
And we will make America great again.
Hey everybody, I'm Laura Trump. The race to November is heating up, and the Trump campaign is gearing up to work harder than ever before to secure 4 more years for President Trump. To achieve this historic win, we need you, your friends, your neighbors, and your families to join our movement. Ready to fight for President Trump? Text ENLIST to 88022 and register at armyfortrump.com today.
We choose truth over facts.
Welcome back to Team Trump Online, where we're tackling the issue of health care. But I have to say, when we were during commercial break, we were having these discussions. And what I love about these women is they have very strong opinions. So we're going to go and jump right into one of the things that Dr. Carson mentioned, which is even if Biden raises taxes, it's not going to cover the cost of healthcare. So, Dr. Carson, can we expand on that?
Sure. The cost is going to be, over $10 trillion. And even if you double the income tax and the corporate taxes, it only covers 1/3 of it. So who's paying for this? And, it's going to trickle down to the middle class and the small businesses. So how are we going to sustain this? This is not a sustainable plan.
And Ronna, obviously what we're seeing in terms of the economy being so impacted by this artificial interruption of coronavirus, what would tax increases mean to the everyday American?
Well, tax increases means a prolonged recession. I mean, that's what's going to happen. We saw the stagnation under Obama and Biden because they increased taxes. So wages stagnated. We didn't see growth in this country. And the second the president got in and he cut regulation and he cut taxes, we saw this boom of 7 million new jobs. So they're going to bury the American people under taxes if they have their way. And I just want to add one more thing, which is a total lie that Democrats spread about this president. The president's going to protect pre-existing health condition coverage. And this is something that Democrats touted all through 2018. They try and scare people that Democrats want to take away pre-existing coverage. And that's just not true. And that is something the president has pledged to the American people.
That's a great point. I think, Katie, we would have that battle all the time as well in the White House, where the president, they would come back to us and say, wait a second, but the president wants to take away pre-existing or not give coverage to those pre-existing conditions. That's obviously false. Walk us through what the president's been able to do to ensure that we're able to lower the cost of healthcare.
That's exactly right. I mean, the president has an unbelievable record of taking on the sort of swampian healthcare special interests in Washington that no other president has tackled before. He ended the gag clauses that pharmacists have so that they couldn't tell you, the patient, the best and cheapest way to pay for your drugs. He's required hospitals to post their prices online, which is causing them to freak out and sue to try to stop it and keep hiding prices from you. He's been taking on the pharmaceutical companies in court to make them tell us their secret prices in their TV ads. He's been calling for the end of surprise billing, especially in the coronavirus stimulus bills, so that we're not stuck with out-of-network surprise bills when we go to an in-network hospital or an ER. The FDA has approved a record number of lower-cost generic drugs, so that, in the first half of the president's term, that policy alone saved American consumers $26 billion. I mean, there's a record that's so big on this, and the president fighting for the American people to have lower costs. Meanwhile, the Democrats are just trying to raise costs and raise your taxes to pay for healthcare.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it really has been one of the major goals of the president to lower prescription drug prices, that being one of his priorities. I think one of the interesting things that we're seeing, Dr. Carson, is that a lot of the pharmaceutical companies are actually in China. And so, and a lot of their distribution and supply chain it's all connected with China, which is incredibly problematic. And the president understands the importance of Buy America, and he wants to move companies back into the U.S. and provide these incentives. That's obviously in contrast to Joe Biden, where we've seen just a weakness coming from Joe Biden and his relationship with China. Why is it critical for us, for the United States, to move these pharmaceutical companies and their supply chains over to the United States?
I think if anything we have learned from this, from coronavirus and the outcomes around this, is the president was always right that he said, move manufacturing back to America. And we have seen this, firsthand with our struggles trying to get things out of China. We have relied way too long on them in terms of the pharmaceuticals, but also the PPEs that really affected our frontline healthcare workers that didn't have access to it. I mean, they're putting themselves in the line of danger wearing coffee masks because we couldn't get things out of China. And so, it's been confiscated at the borders, and people keep forgetting that we're at a trade war and they're playing dirty. And the president's been right all along, and we really need to move manufacturing back to America.
Ronna, let me go to you. So we've seen now that the president has increased testing. I think we're over 10 million tests that have been that Americans have been taken here in the United States. He's been obviously working very closely with the states and local governments to make sure that they're getting the supplies they need. One angle I think that's important is to talk about the innovation. and what that means here in the United States in terms of ensuring that that we're able to produce the vaccine and find how we can combat coronavirus. Walk us through what the president's been able to accomplish in terms of from the innovation standpoint and working with the private sector to find solutions during this difficult time.
Well, early on, the president recognized that the government and the CDC and the state labs were not prepared for a 50-state declaration of emergency with this virus descending upon our country. And so he immediately mobilized the private sector in a way that we've never seen, where we have ramped up testing to a place where we've done more tests than any other country in the world, with now 10 million tests and more coming. I think we're conducting close to 400,000 tests a day right now, which is just phenomenal. But let's not forget that if we were a socialized medicine country, if we did have Medicare for all, that innovation wouldn't be there. There would be no private sector to harness. We wouldn't be in this position. So because of the healthcare research and the innovation we have in this country, because of the system we have, we've been able to ramp up and fight this virus. But that would not be there if Joe Biden were president, because he'd create Medicare for all and destroy the research and innovation that we needed in this time, in this place.
And one other point, Katie, is on the World Health Organization. I'd love to get your take on, first of all, the president's action. He halted funding to the World Health Organization because of their, I would say, appeasing China. And but then we know that Joe Biden criticized the president's action on halting funding and said he would restore it immediately. He called the president racist. Why? What are the issues with the World Health Organization and why the president's action was the right action to take?
Right, Marcy. The World Health Organization, which is an organ of the United Nations, headquartered in Geneva, they have one job: to tell the world the truth about deadly diseases as early as possible, so that member states can take informed actions to protect their citizens with actual facts. And the World Health Organization knew in December that this disease was spread by human-to-human contact. At the same time, China was lying about that specific point to the world, and the WHO let them get away with this lie, which damaged every other nation's, including our, ability to fight and prepare for the disease. What's, another thing they did is that they opposed the travel restrictions from China, like the president's early actions, while at the very same time, they knew that China itself was restricting travel in and out of Wuhan. But they criticized us for doing the same thing. And finally, they backed and gave sort of this gravitas, this credibility to fake statistics coming out of China, a gross undercount of cases. And because of that, we all lost valuable time because the WHO needlessly and mindlessly parroted what it knew were Chinese lies. So it's about time. I mean, I've worked with the WHO for over a decade, and nobody has ever taken them on this way. I've been wanting this to happen for years. Finally, President Trump is putting the brakes on the billions of dollars that previous presidents, just shoveled out to the Geneva headquarters. But Joe Biden, like you said, he's promised to turn back on the spigot of taxpayer funding to this corrupt and incompetent organization.
Right, and Joe Biden being the status quo, globalist, career politician, which, as he says, he says, come on, man, like China's not, they're not eating our lunch. It's like that he has no judgment, or I would say bad judgment, when it comes to China. Let's dig deeper into China, Dr. Carson. We see that there's been the lack of transparency when it comes to data. We saw a New York Times article where we're seeing the Chinese hacking into our research institutions to try to steal the information on as we're trying to produce these vaccines. What does that tell you about how we, the United States, have to remain tough on China? Obviously, contrasting that with the fact that Joe Biden's history shows that he's actually cozier with China than most politicians.
Well, I love that the president is standing up to China. Like Katie mentioned, he's the only one who's standing up to the World Health Organization that was needed for a very long time. Just like that, he's standing up to China, and he's been calling them out. Yeah, and I think that's really, really important. We need to hold them accountable for the things that's happening. They're taking our IP. They're restricting things that are coming out of there, and we're too reliant on them, and we need to stop that. And I think the president and Biden is not the person to stand up to them. I mean, he's hypocritical in the way he approaches this, and I think the president is the right person to be able to stand up and say, no, enough is enough.
So, Ronna, let me ask you, you've seen the president up close and personal when it comes to how he negotiates these trade deals, how he interacts with China. What's the contrast here in terms of when you're seeing the real danger that it would be if Joe Biden were to become president, knowing that he has been the globalist politician for so long?
Well, Joe Biden and Barack Obama always wanted to be liked by the world, and they made trade deals that were not beneficial to America, but were more beneficial to countries like China. That's why we've seen so much of our pharmaceutical supply chain be there, and our supply chains for many other companies and industries across this country be outside of the United States of America. And when candidate Trump came on the scene, he said, America first. Negotiate on behalf of this country first and foremost. That's what a president should do. Now we've seen the wisdom of all the things he talked about in the very early stages of his campaign. He said it's a national security issue that we don't have manufacturing in this country anymore. He said after World War II, we mobilized our country and we were able to manufacture so quickly, which was a national security benefit to us. And we don't have that capacity anymore. And he brought back 500,000 manufacturing jobs to this country. And that's why you have Ford and GM making ventilators. So not one person in this country who needed a ventilator went without one. The wisdom and the foresight of this president has been proven and shown to be true. And Joe Biden has said China's not competition. He made bad trade deals. He's been in Washington for 40 years and he never saw the threat that China was. He's not going to see it now. We have the right president and we need to reelect him because he's the only one who will be tough on China.
Thank you all. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Ready to go?
This is a crisis.
This is no time for Donald Trump's record of hysterical xenophobia.
Biden's son inked $1 billion deal with a subsidiary of the Bank of China.
Why are we getting nervous, man? China is going to eat our lunch? Come on, man. They're not bad folks.
Since the outbreak, the Communist Party has been mobilizing overseas organizations to buy local supplies and send them to China.
The growth of China is overwhelmingly in our interest.
What a beautiful history we wrote together. Banning all travel will not stop it.
The president is right. That travel restriction on China, as every public health official we've talked to said, bought the country time.
Hysterical xenophobia. Jeremiah.
Xenophobia.
Joe.
I complimented him on dealing with China. I'm not going nuts.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Democrats destroy everything they touch. That's a fact. After years of failure as a result of their terrible leadership, our nation is finally winning again under President Donald J. Trump. Sadly, the Democrats and the fake news media hate my father more than they love our country, and they're doing whatever it takes to tear us down at the expense of the American people. That's why we need every American patriot to step up and join our fight. Just download our app to receive alerts from the Trump campaign, and you'll get the latest updates on our efforts to keep America great.
Welcome back to Team Trump Online. Joining me tonight, we have Chairman of the Republican National Committee, Ronna McDaniel, Katie Talento, former White House Domestic Policy Council official, and Dr. Merlynn Carson, CEO of Meridian. Thank you all for joining us. I think this has been a very insightful discussion on the direction of where we're going in terms of healthcare and how we have to ensure that President Trump is reelected so he keeps fighting for American patients and protecting American patients, as well as making sure that Biden does not end up in office, because that could be disastrous for our healthcare system. So I want to just open it up to final thoughts. We'll start with you, Dr. Carson. Anything you want to share with the viewers? What message do you want to leave with the viewers in terms of the importance of getting President Donald Trump reelected in November?
We need somebody like President Trump, who's going to stand up for the American people, who understands that we need to push back where we need to push back and not be afraid to do so. And that's what he's done with China. And we have really learned a lesson with coronavirus and our dynamic, our relationship with China. And we need to keep our healthcare, we need accessibility to healthcare. And we also need to have control of our own healthcare and not, go into this Medicare for all. It's not going to be the coverage that, Biden wants us to believe it is. And we're going to go more into debt. So, we need a president that understands that and fights for the American people.
Thank you, Dr. Carson. I want to thank all those first responders, doctors and nurses who are on the front line, taking care of the patients, getting us through this difficult pandemic. Your prayers and your thoughts, are with us. And we thank you for what you're doing, Dr. Carson, and all those in the medical field who are literally, putting their lives at risk. I think that it's very heroic. Katie, let me go to you. Any final thoughts as we move forward? Why healthcare, as we know, is going to be one of the top topics that we're going to see during this election season, and why we're moving in the right track with President Trump and as president?
Yeah, when I listen to Joe Biden, I hear him putting government first and American patients last. We need someone like President Trump who will fight for us, fight for the patients in healthcare. In no other industry do the sellers of a product, like hospitals and insurance companies, conspire together to cook up secret pricing contracts that they hide from the buyers of the product, which is the patients, their employers, and their unions. But Joe Biden, his whole career, he's worked to protect these sort of swampian special interests in Washington, D.C. Our healthcare system should take care of Americans and not, take advantage of them. But President Trump, he's different. He's different than anyone I've ever seen before, that any of us have ever seen before in office. He's been pushing big hospital systems, drug makers, insurance companies to compete openly and fiercely for our business. Compete on cost, on price, on quality. He believes that Americans should never be the victims of price gouging in healthcare. We have the right to know our price. So I'm so grateful that President Trump is making us, making the healthcare industry show the price, whereas Joe Biden just wants the government to set the price. So I'm excited about President Trump getting reelected because I know he'll be fighting hard and that he's going to make sure that American healthcare is more affordable, it's fair, it's honest, and it's the absolute best in the world. That's what we deserve. That's what we expect.
Ronna, final thoughts on today's show, what message you want to leave the viewers, obviously, as you're the leader of our party and really an inspiration, I think, for all of us out there, because you're constantly fighting for President Trump. Final thoughts.
Well, thank you all. I'm so honored to be on this panel with just such remarkable women. And I meet so many great women who work for this president and support this president. So thank you. And I want to echo what Mercy said about our first responders and those on the front lines. Thank you so much for what you're doing during this difficult time. I always ask myself, Joe Biden was in Washington for 40 years. If he didn't get it done in those first 40 years, is he really going to get it done if he gets elected president? And I think about our health care. The president has lowered the cost of prescription drugs. He has fought for more transparency and no surprise billing. He has fought to make sure that we can maintain that doctor-patient relationship. And Joe Biden's answer is always more government, which means more taxes. And people should be very wary, because that absolutely means not only will you be paying more, you will be paying more for less quality health care. And that is not what our country is about. And especially right now when we're seeing innovation coming through on the vaccine front, on the testing front, that is because of the great country we have, which would not exist under a single payer Medicare for all system that Joe Biden is pushing. And I want to end with one final thing, because the Democrats lie about this all the time. President Trump will protect pre-existing condition coverage. That is a promise he has made over and over again. And Democrats lie, but the president's told the truth, and he'll continue to do that as he fights for the American people.
Thank you so much. I have to say, for those out there who are watching, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your colleagues while you're social distancing. That is a very important fact. The president will protect and has protected those with pre-existing conditions. It is something the Democrats will continue to lie about through this election season. And also, it's important to talk about how President Trump has been such a bold leader during this very difficult time of really jump-starting and working with the private sector to find innovative solutions and ensuring that states have what they have in terms of supplies and resources in order for them to be able to get through this pandemic. And also President Trump's leadership in ensuring that we provide immediate relief to families, to our small businesses, so we can get through this artificial interruption of the economy. We're going to get this economy going again. We're going to protect our healthcare system. We're going to protect our patients, American patients. And we're also going to ensure that we work together to reelect President Donald J. Trump. We need all of you to get involved. You can be part of this movement by going to armyfortrump.com, by texting Trump at 88022, and really also downloading our app, which is a great way to stay connected and be able to know what's happening, what events we're having online. We've seen an enormous success with Team Trump Online, over 1 million viewers to 2 million viewers a night. And that's because you all recognize the importance of making sure that we get President Trump reelected. But we need all of you involved. And Ronna knows this better than anyone. We count on our volunteers. You're the heart and soul of the campaign. And you're the reason why we will be successful in November and get President Trump reelected. So thank you, my wonderful friends, wonderful ladies on the show, for your insight, for your expertise. And we want to say good night and watch us again tomorrow night, Team Trump Online, 8 p.m. Eastern. God bless you. God bless President Trump, and God bless America.